Hello, this is another Crossroads process video. This is page 19 of Love in the Time of COVID, a short mini comic I'm working on right now. So after I do the blue thumbnails, I put in the speech balloons and panel borders. Then I start working out the pencil roughs. It took me a while to really lock down the pencil roughs. I think that, the hardest ones was probably the perspective panels under the top three there. I wanted to have a real restaurant in Vancouver, so I had to do some referencing on that and set those perspective grids. And then I have this nice little picnic in the park as my last panel, which I think worked out really well. For the first panel, I was struggling with the posing, so you'll see I used those 3D mannequins. I like using the 3D mannequins to plan out poses. Sometimes it's a little bit more about moving the bodies around just to find the pose, not so much that it's hard to draw that pose. But I do find that it's a helpful tool in Clip Studio Paint. I went in with some really thick black lines to ink the outside edges, which I think has been working really well in my inking style. As you can see, I still nudged the characters a little bit closer together, and I played around with some fun patterning. And the first panel was finished, but then I went in to pencil the other pages. Did some rearranging there to get the speech balloons up top, just so I'm not cutting a character's legs off in the second panel. And overall, the third panel basically remained unchanged. This next panel is probably the most difficult. You can see me putting in the perspective lines and cutting things up. It took a while to plan out the outdoor patio and just get the location drawn in. So it took a while to figure out how to fit the characters in, what size the characters should be in relation to the background, and also just what these other patrons sitting at the table would end up looking like. And that was something I had to come back to a little later. I'm getting in the habit now of turning off the speech balloons just so I can draw the full scene before I put the balloons back on top. And this next panel with the 1 point perspective really did my head in for a bit, so it was really hard just to kind of get all the eye lines lined up, get the characters in position. It was a little bit confusing having Bree, who's about one head shorter than Mike, and still getting everything to kind of line up on the horizon line. So ultimately, I think it worked out pretty well. And then on this last one, I used some special rulers to draw in the picnic table. And of course, the nice thing about a picnic in the park is all the trees can be kind of organic. So I tried to just get some nice warm poses out of the characters and just set a really nice scene for that final panel. And then you can see me going in and doing my inks. So I've started to draw behind the speech balloons. This is something I didn't used to do, and I kind of regret, because then if you need to nudge speech balloons, it just makes life a little more complicated. So if I just turn the balloons off and focus on drawing the panel, it makes it a lot easier to work with. So I really had fun doing this extra patterning. I used a pattern brush on Mike's shirt and a little polka dot pattern on Bree, and then I started using these dots for the sky. These images were just to give me some idea of clothing and hairstyle for my customers, just so that they wouldn't feel so generic. So I think that worked out pretty well. And drawing and redrawing a little bit, just trying to find some nice compositions without things getting awkward. Bree's leg poking out behind the booth just looked kind of weird. And ultimately, I think it came together fairly well. I like this little sequence. I like that I could include an actual restaurant that you can go to in Vancouver as part of the scene. The Burrow's one of my favorite places to eat at. And you can see me working these over. I do like the vector brushes, so that lets me have a little bit more flexibility. And I try to not lock these things in too quickly, so I do sort of try to allow myself to rethink and adjust at each stage so that I can really bring out the best panel for the storytelling. And yeah, I think that this last panel with the little picnic in the park worked out really well. It's a nice little moment on Mike and Bree's first in-person date. And I tried to brush in and do this watercolor effect, and I tried adding a little dot pattern on top of the layer just to blend it in with the other the other dots. I don't know if it's clear in the video, but anyways, this was my page 19. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this, and please think about liking and subscribing and checking out some of my other comics.